Alright, what I'd like to go over today is marking the base posterior. Before we get into the particulars about that, I'd like to talk about what we call a head tilt. Before you can determine whether your base posterior is actually a usable image, you need to know whether you have head tilt. And the base posterior is the only X-ray in the Blair series where we want to take out their natural head carriage. Why is that important? If you have big head tilt in the image and you mark the base posterior convergence angles, you're going to get bad information, and obviously this work is all about precision. So in determining whether you have head tilt or not, what you want to do is you want to find two like areas on the BP. These areas right in here, you'll see similar structures, so you want to find the same structures on both sides, mark 2 points, and then so here we have this V-like structure right here. We're going to mark the apex of that, and then if we go over here to the other side, you will see the same V-like structure, and right there we'll mark that point. And then what you want to do is set your ruler with those 2 points and mark from the point to the outer margin of the skull, and from that point and to the outer margin of the skull, and that line should be within 1/8 of an inch on both sides. If you're more than 1/8 of an inch, then you got to retake the picture because you're not within the parameters of giving you proper convergence angles. So I've already measured this one. This one is actually 1/8 of an inch. I'm not going to do that just to save time. Let's get into the marking. So base posterior, we're looking at the right joint and left joint of the condyle. And remember, when we're marking a base posterior, here's the right marker here on the right side. So we know this is the right and that's the left. And you see 2 earplugs here. That's how we're going to reference our convergence angles, and we'll get to that in a second. So the first point that we mark is anterior 1, and that's actually the junction between the anterior arch and the lateral mass. And you can see right about here you see a kink. So you're looking for that indentation where the anterior arch meets the lateral mass. So the left anterior point 1 is right there. And then if we follow this left lateral mass around, you can see that it kinks right there. And one thing you'll notice about this base posterior, talking about asymmetry, you see that the left lateral mass is much anterior of the right lateral mass. Might be how they're built, might be osseous asymmetry. Anyway, so anterior 1 here, anterior 1 here. Posterior point 1 is the junction between the foramen magnum and the lateral mass. So I always come down here to the posterior margin. You can see that very clearly that the foramen magnum is here, and you want to follow this around, and I bring that up through the lateral mass, and where those two meet, that's posterior point 1 right there. And then we'll follow this other one up, coming around, and you can see this lateral mass coming around through here, and where those intersect, that's posterior point 1. So our next job is going to be marking the lateral margin of both of these joints, and the easiest way to go about doing this is come up to the anterior tubercle. It's usually clearly defined, and we want to be careful not to mark all the way around the joint in this one, but you can come around to the anterior arch and with a dashed line start to mark that outer margin here. Usually, not always, but usually it's going to pass through the foramen magnum there. I'm sorry, the inner transversarium or transverse foramen there halfway, most of the time, not always. Now on this one you don't see it so much, but a lot of time the vertebral artery comes, as you know, over the posterior arch, and you a lot of times are going to see this part dip in here. Don't let that fool you that think you're missing something. Dr. Harkins, in talking to him, talks about this a lot, that you will see that dip in there. So if you get a dip here, and on the Blair views, that's what creates point 1 and 2. That's for another video, but just side note. So Come over here. Here is the outer margin again. We're scribing this all the way around to here. Coming around here. And so now we've got the outer margin marked. We've got anterior 1, posterior 1. Now what we want to do is we want to connect anterior 1 and posterior 1. And scribe a line. Do it on the other side. Now we've got, we want to do it a little neater than that. Let's redo that. So again, we want to connect these dots. There we go. Now what you want to do is you want to draw a perpendicular line from anterior 1 to the outer margin of the lateral mass, which you've marked, which is right there. And then posterior point 1, we're going to do the same thing. We're going to draw a perpendicular line to that line we described, and you're going to make a dot on the outer margin. You're going to make a dot here. We'll go to the other side. We'll do the same thing. We'll go to posterior point 1 on the left. Again, draw a perpendicular and make those dots. Now what we want to do is we want to bisect those 2 points. So anterior 1 and anterior 2, we're going to want to bisect those. So we got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Half of 7's 3 1/2. 1, 2, 3. Split the difference right here. There's the point for the convergence angle. We're going to do the same thing here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 here this time. Split the difference. You got 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Now we want to connect both of those dots. This is going to make our right convergence angle. There we go. We're going to come over here to the left joint. We're going to bisect that line. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 1, 2, 3, 4. So half of 8 is 4. Make a dot. Bisect our last line here. One, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So you'll notice these are not going to be always the same on both the lines because the joints are different. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So 4 1/2. 1, 2, 3, 4. There we go. Connect these 2 dots. There's our left convergence angle. Now you've got the earplug line that we've got to scribe, and you want to make sure you mark the same dots. I always take this where that ear tube or plug connects to that washer there on both sides. You want to make sure you're at the same exact area. Scribe a line. So that earplug line, when we take the Blair views, is a reference point. It makes sure that when we're taking that Blair view down both of those angles that we're lining that patient up in the same exact area that we took that angle off of, which again is the earplug line. Now, this is a part that confuses a lot of people. 0 degrees is going to be perpendicular to that earplug line. So if that joint is straight forward, that's going to be 0 degrees. If it's turned this way, that's 10, 20, 30, 40, right? So put that protractor right on that earplug line. 90 is this way. We're going to count. We are going to count. 90 is our 0 line. So 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, 26, 27, 28, 29. We're 29 on the left. Measure the left convergence angle. Again, going to 90 is our 0 mark. That joint is turned to the right. 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, 30, 35 degrees on the left. So there you have it. There's your base posterior. Your next step in taking the Blair series is going to be to shoot the Blair views down both of those angles, and we'll do that on another video.